Yeah, okay, you said three. So now if I share, well, I played something, you don't hear anything right now, right? Like if I just do this, do you hear anything?
I don't hear anything right now.
Okay, so
I
let's
hear
see
you
if I
loud and
share.
clear. And Francis, we are live. So, welcome to the show.
There you
And
go.
I
Let's
know
do it
we're
this way.
we're we're doing present moment stuff here. You're bringing
Present
some
moment.
stuff.
Who's this guy that was talking about? Do you hear anything? Do you hear the conversation?
Do you
And we're
hear
live.
these voices coming through the mics? Um,
Exactly, exactly.
So, Francis, really want to welcome you to Conscious Conversations with both myself, Nitin, and Nick. Of course, this as the scheduling gods would have it today. Despite all of our best tries, Nick couldn't make it. So it was meant to be that the two of us get to have a
Exactly.
powerful conversation. And I know we've been chatting for a few minutes already. We're feeling it. We're about to dive in. And you were
Yeah,
going to bring up like a meditation for the group, something that you use with your clients to sort of ground them to get started. Um,
yeah.
you want to try one more time and see if that.
I apparently it doesn't work, but what we can do though, I mean, we can even do silent. I actually, when I started to meditate, and I realized it's been almost 7 years now.
Yeah.
I my meditation practice has changed. Like now that we're talking about meditation, so I think it's good to share that it changed my life completely. I mean, I think that I know the days when I'm not meditating because the best analogy that I can give you is, the movie The Matrix when the bullets are starting to come towards the body, right? Like he's able to just dodge it. And I think that's how I see life when I'm meditating. I'm able to respond instead of reacting. And the bullet is going way slower and I can just be in the moment a lot more. And so at first when I meditated, I remember I told myself, oh, I'm not 15 minutes is too long. 15 minutes is too long. So and 10 is too quick. So I did 13, big difference of 2 minutes, right? And now if you ask me, I just did this morning, thanks to Dr. Joe's meditation, Dr. Joe Dispenza, 33 minutes breath work and then 52 minutes meditation altogether. So it's been almost 10 days that I'm doing that. So it's an hour and a half. It's very different.
Wow.
So, and at first I started with nothing, just really observing my thoughts, and which was fascinating. I think I had a game that I played, which was I'm starting with this thought, and let's see what will be the last word I'm going to hear once the bell is ringing, because I was using, Insight Timer. I'm still using it, and to notice the world of difference from where I was and where I ended was fascinating. And so I think it was a great exercise for me to understand, what type of thoughts and how to observe. And I further developed my meditation practice with the Vipassana, which is 10 days silent meditation, which was a
Yeah.
big experience on its own. So now, when I do meditations with my client at Thinking into Results, Proctor Gallagher Institute program, what we do is that we start with that to ground ourselves. And I have some sort of a song that people can play, or that I use. And the thing is all about living from the end. And that's a big component of the resilience element formula that I have, and it's pretty much certainty. So if you know Neville Goddard, he talks about awakened imagination, or he talks about the power of awareness. I have the book right here,
Yeah.
and it's all about living in the end, right? Like this is such a good book, and was written I think in 1955 or so. And in that meditation, what I invite
55.
people to
Wow.
do, yeah, 55. I think it was 55 and 53. And so what I invite my clients to do is to live from the end and really imagine themselves how would they feel. Feeling is very important, and it's also a good way to see if you're aligned with your belief and your actions. Because if you're just thinking consciously, but in your subconscious mind you don't really believe it, that's not really happening. But with repetition, you can borrow feelings of other things, right? Like the feeling of gratitude, which could be I'm petting my dog, and now, oh, I feel so good, I feel in love. And you can have that same type of borrowing the feeling, and just imagining what it would be like once you've accomplished your goal, or once you've lived something you really wanted to. So for now, what we can do is maybe just a minute and just imagine something that people really want, and that they might be a travel destination, or what life would be after they've accomplished one of their goal, or after they have moved to a new place, and then just kind of imagining from the beginning to the end how the day would start. They wake up, where are they? Are they in a beautiful bed? Or are they in a different location? What are they smelling? What are they hearing? Are they in Costa Rica with a lot of different birds?
Yeah.
Are they near the ocean, hearing the waves and feeling the breeze on their skin? And then that's where you go through that, and with repetition, you'd be surprised that things are starting to happen and they come to you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Do you want to just guide us through like
Yeah,
maybe a minute or two?
yeah, we can do that. So let's do. I'll use the insight timer actually. So, and I'm not gonna talk. So it's really setting ourselves into this day. We're waking up. It's a beautiful day wherever the people want to be, and we're gonna do a 2 minute meditation on that. So timer, and you can do it with nice music, bio beats with great frequencies if you like it. That's really a good way to feel and relax. What's very important is to feel relaxed,
Hmm.
and then we will continue the conversation. So let's do 2 minutes to start now.
Perfect.
There you go. Thank you for doing this. I've never ever done that on a on an interview. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, and we typically kick off our podcast sessions here with just getting people grounded, and getting to that present moment. So this helps people disconnect a little bit from wherever they may have been during the day, the circumstances happening throughout life, right? There's always 100 things knocking at your attention. So this is just one way to sort of reconnect with that inner core, and then really be able to have that deep conversation when we're here. I really use some of how you set us up, really, and I was like, okay, well, where's that beautiful place that I like to be that really brings that inner strength? And I went to, often as I like to go on hikes in the redwoods, surrounded by tall trees, with maybe a little bit of fog coming in, and just kind of felt really at peace. And that was really grounded. Where were you, Francis?
Well, I'm excited that in a week from now or 2 weeks from now, we'll go to Petra in Jordan. So I'm super excited about that. And then Egypt was part of a destination that I was thinking about. I'm not gonna go this time, and I just went in my mind to another travel where I'm with my wife. I don't have a wife now, and I don't have a girlfriend, but that's what I imagine because I when I read the book The Alchemist, which was a really important book for me when I first started to develop myself in new realms, I always envisioned that I would be with my wife and my kid because that's going to the finding your legend, and so I would just that was a very important moment for me to imagine myself with my wife and my kid and say, hey, this means a lot to me to be at the pyramids right now because here's what happened, 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So
Yeah.
that's where I went. Yeah, it was beautiful.
And so is that part of the sort of conscious creation aspect that you're bringing into your own life to work, create the sort of desired family around you?
Yeah, that's part of my objectives, and I'm learning a lot lately with, and today is the day actually that I'm officially certified for consultant as Proctor Gallagher, and I've learned so much because I've had my
Congratulations.
own recipe. Thank you. It feels good. It's an investment that I made in myself, and also that helps me to help clients. And I had my own resilience. I call it resilience element formula before, which is really a foundation. And I was sharing with one of my friends this morning that I knew consciously the components of it to be resilient no matter what happens in your life. And there's one component that I didn't have a hard time to explain, but I had a hard time to fully understand it. And now with the work that I've done over the last year with Proctor Gallagher, I really understand, and especially with Neville Goddard, this concept of certainty and really being a creator. And it's really starting with a decision because most people, they have a goal, but it's not necessarily the biggest goal that they could imagine because they don't know how. And so because they don't know how, they don't pick up that goal. But the real game of creation and universe and divine is expansion. And
Mhm.
so once you make that committed decision, then the how shows up, and the game is really to think from the end the whole time. And no matter what you see on the outside. I read something this morning again, and it was about, a farmer wouldn't be stressed about what's going to come out of the soil. He doesn't watch every day. Okay, are you out? Are you out? Are you out now? Like, and so that's not like that, right? Like the
Right.
gestation period that happens, you plant the seed, you have no expectations of the outcome, you're detached from it, and you just know it's going to happen. That sense of certainty and faith.
Yeah.
So they say that, Neville Goddard mentions many times that the biggest thing that we have is imagination, and then you combine it with faith. That's how you create. And so that's what I consciously create right now in my mind, is that game of creation with what I want, and as much as I can being in that moment now, because we attract who we are, we don't attract what we want. So by being this person right now with this frequency, with this emotion, with this feeling, then and certainty, after we've made the decision, then things are happening, and I can relate so many examples in my life where I wanted something, but I never really fully committed to it.
Mhm.
And until I committed, then things were starting to happen. Even with the program, I felt, oh, I'm going to pre-sell the program, and then with the money, I'm going to be able to just be the consultant. But it actually didn't work. It worked after I made the first payment, after I committed and I made that decision, then things started to happen. And I think it's a beautiful lesson because, we just need to decide. And in our society, we're not being trained how to decide, but we do, but we do it in a way that is not serving, because we always decide, we always make a choice.
Yeah. That's actually, as you were explaining that, I was just writing down, yeah, and what almost kind of came across to me as like a framework of imagination, faith, and then decision.
I would I would say decision first, imagination, and then faith.
So
Yeah,
decision
because
first.
the real question is, what do you really want?
Hmm.
What do you really want?
Yeah.
So,
What are you even
you
trying to
know,
imagine?
yeah, and if it's really what you want, then you will imagine the way. And you have five beautiful mental faculties that you can use. You can use your perception. You can see things from a different angle, and that could provide a solution if you have a challenge. You can use your memory, remembering things that you've learned. You can your reasoning, your imagination, your intuition. All of those things are very powerful. And again, like we've been. This is the funny thing is that we have been trained to make decisions based on our five senses, what we hear, smell, touch, and feel. But that's not the best way to be resilient, because now you might not see the evidence yet. Like a farmer, you don't see the tree, you don't see the seed that it has grown, so you're afraid because you don't see the results, you don't see the evidence of it, so you stop. But everything is created inside first. Creation happens twice: inside first, and then it's going to be externally manifested after.
Yeah.
And the trick with the senses now is to use your senses without the evidence. That's why we did the meditation. So you're using the senses that actually are not necessarily serving you if you're looking at your results. Your results are a direct reflection of what's inside you. But you can use your senses in order to manifest, but not do not so the trick is to not be controlled by what's external. You control everything internal, and you use your senses as if you're already there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, it does, and there's, it's like almost a beautiful way to sort of to help folks see that there is an external and that there is an internal to even begin with. So there's external, there's all of our senses, like you mentioned, that are constantly feeding input into us. We are always taking an input from our external sources, and then
Hmm.
just like what we did here, briefly, 2 minutes silence, going inwards. And what we're teaching, essentially what you're explaining, is start from the internal first, ground yourself in the internal first, and that then the external manifestation follows. Now, of
Yeah,
course, dependent on how strong our imagination is, how strong our faith is what I hear you
yeah,
saying.
yeah. And I'll give you a quick story. I don't know if you ever heard of the book Psycho-Cybernetics.
I have not.
Okay, so this was done by Maxwell I think I have the book even with me right now. Yeah, so it's Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics. And this guy, again, like those people were writing great stuff in, I think it was in the 60s. And this guy he's a plastic surgeon, if I do remember. And what he's noticed is that people would have a transformation on the outside, and a lot of the people that, let's say, they wanted to change something because they felt that their appearance was not great, they changed it, and then some people would have a boost of self-confidence. They would just
Mhm.
say, wow, I feel so great. And some people had the same type of procedures, but nothing changed. Their self-confidence didn't change. They still felt that they were not good enough. So that got him thinking, huh, that's interesting. So, what is really making a change? Is that the outer image or the self image? So, the self image is created inside.
Mhm.
And the beauty is that you can change it. You can change it yourself. That doesn't mean it's easy, but you realize at one point that having some sort of a belief is no longer serving me, and I have always been able to change my thoughts. And that's conscious creating. That's really choosing the thoughts that's going to lead to a result. And um, and the thing is also is that people don't realize, but they have been, and I've realized that that's one of my biggest moment, I think, of learning is I've manifested exactly, and all of us, exactly to the T, what we believe. So we have been amazing manifestors. So
Yeah,
now, if you use the
all our life.
analogy of yeah, all of life, all of it, and then so now you can see that you can use, if you use an analogy of a boat, or on the ocean. And a sailboat, you just use your sail to the direction that you want. The wind is the same, but you can go either left or you can either go right. So what do you want? So that's the decision that you make internally by switching your cell to a certain direction. So you can focus on what you're lacking, you can focus on the reasons why you can't, or you can have this self-confidence, this
Yeah.
self-image that you believe that you will be able to find a solution, and you don't focus any of your energy on the lack, because that's wasted energy. That's an energy that you can actually use for something else. And then you realize, I've been stressed. Where did I lead me? And there's no such thing as stress. I don't know if you knew. We can remove stress in a second.
Say more about that.
You know what stress is?
Anxiety, response to uncertainty.
Stress stress is a stressful thought. So you remove the stressful thought, there's no stress, right? So that means that you have a thought. That's huge. Like once you realize that,
Yeah.
why am I stressed? Because I'm worrying about something in the future. But what is that? Is that tangible? No, it's just a thought. So you have an event. With the events are all neutral. You pick up a perception. You expect something. Your assumptions are yours. They can be very, very different. You can have an accident. Right now, you would have a perception of what happened. I would have a different perception of what
Mhm.
happened, but the event is the same. So that's neutral. So now when you start to expect and worry about the future, that's a thought. So remove that thought, then there's no stress. And a great question from Byron Katie. She's people can search for the work. And one of the powerful questions that I love is, who would you be without that thought? So let's say there's something that's stressing you right now. Who would you be if you didn't have that thought? If
Mhm.
actually, what you expect is not going to happen, who would you be? You'd be probably a lot calmer. You'd be happier. You'd be smiling. You'd be relief, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so if let's say people say, well, I'm scared to lose my job, that creates a lot of anxiety, that creates a lot of worry. So who would you be without the thought that you will lose it? Who would you be if you had the thought that actually you'd get a promotion? You see how we can
Yeah.
really, now all
Reverse.
of a sudden, like,
Yeah.
there's excitement, but it was just a thought. So that's why I love to call myself a mindset alchemist, because we can transmute these limiting beliefs thoughts and turn them into gold, like turning the lead into gold in their mind.
And I know, like, for us, we practice this. We've been practicing it for years, and over time it's become easier for us to also catch our thoughts and reverse them. I know a lot of people that might be listening to this may say, well, I've tried that, but this thought still doesn't leave me. This like crazy event that occurred with me a day ago, a week ago, a month ago, it's still just overwhelmingly coming back and back and back. I have some ways that I think about how to tackle something like that. I'm curious to hear from you though. How do you help someone who feels like that I'm overwhelmed by my thoughts? I'm stuck in my thoughts. I want to get out, and I get what you're saying, Francis, but like, how do I break this cycle?
Well, there's different ways of, first of all, I'd like to know the extent as to which the person is suffering. Suffering and pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. And then they'll say, oh, yeah, I get that. But yeah, so now how does that serve you? Where is that going to lead? So I think that sometimes, you can go into, depending on the situation again, right? Let's say you have an expectation and assumption that things are not going to go well, but have you really went through the whole thing? Meaning that, you might just know on the surface level that something is bad. I'll give you a perfect example. That's something that happened this week.
Yeah.
So I was scheduled to go do a talk for a company in Southeast Asia. It was supposed to be virtual at first, and then they said, we're going to go in person. I can't go in person. So now all of a sudden, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure about we got to do it in person, and I had to really question myself about my values, because in that case there was some requirements that were asked for me to travel in that direction. That's all I can say. Or I mean, the fact is, I'm going to say it is like, I decided for me right now not to be vaccinated. and that's just a personal choice. And I think I fully agree with whatever the people decide. Like if that's the angle that they decide to have, I'm super happy about it. That's your choice, and I respect that. I love that. So now, logistically speaking, I couldn't go
Mhm.
to this location anyway, because that's 7 days of quarantine, which I was fine to do it. So there's a teaching in there to assume the consequence of your choices.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be mad about it. That's a personal choice. And if I don't want that, then I get vaccinated and that's it.
Right.
That could be easier or not. So, but the point is that in that situation, the event was virtual at first, and then they changed it to in person. So I don't want to change my mind. And I really asked myself, do I want that? Like, and it was difficult because there's a lot of potential business that could happen out of that. Like we're
Mhm.
talking about 70 leaders. So my mind's going, that's a lot of potential business. I could miss this, I could miss that. And then, but I really had to, and I found my inner peace by doing something that's in my own truth. I'm going to get to what you're asking is that at one point in that conversation with my contact, I said, we were discussing, and I said, okay, so what's going to happen if we do it in person? So, whatever the situation the person is dealing with, okay, so that's your fear. What's going to happen if that happens? Well, they're going to be upset. Okay, they're going to be upset, and then what? So you go through it. You go,
Mhm.
okay, so are we, because if you just stop at, oh, they're going to be upset, you might just be in a loop where it doesn't change, because you fully don't know
Right.
what's the consequence. So then we went through the scenario. Okay, so what's going to happen? Well, they're going to be upset, so then what? Well, they might call it off. Okay, so then what? Well, they call up, and then the questions that I was asking my contact, I said, are you okay with that? Are you okay to live with this consequence? And the answer was, yeah, I am, because I feel that the company is talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but not on that. And it wanted to know who's vaccinated and who's not. And I don't want to. That's personal information. I don't want to ask this question. And I said, I'm proud of you. So now we went through it, and then at the end we felt good, because we're like, we're sticking to our own truth, which everyone has their own truth, everyone has their own,
Yep.
like that's a personal choice for everything that you want. But for in our cases, we're like, yeah, I'm not going to compromise my values and my principles for that, even though I know that the consequence might mean that there's no business at all ever. Or I can also think that, hey, you know what? Maybe that's going to be a good questions for people that are going to ask themselves, are we really for diversity, inclusion, and equity right now? Or is there some, and I know that it's probably triggering a lot of feelings for maybe the listeners or not, but that's good questions to ask if we
Yeah.
want to evolve in the society. So for me, it's like, let's open it up. Who knows the truth? Like, we thought about things in the past that were not true, and now they are. We thought that Marconi was crazy to think that it was possible to listen to voices in the air with radio, and then it became possible. And we thought that it was crazy that some people would fly and with a plane. We thought that there's that Earth was flat, and it's
Yeah.
there's so many things. So who are we? So the point is that let's just be open, let's discuss, right? So to go back to what you said, I think it's really about how does that serve you to still be stressed and suffer? Do you really also understand the full consequence of what you're fearing? And
Mhm.
most of the time, there's a great book with Dale Carnegie, and it said how to live and stop worrying, or something to that effect. And I think that the stats are 90% of all our worries are not even happening, but you suffer in the meantime. So an
Right. 'Cause you
analogy that
keep
I like to
hypothesizing about, just scenarios in your head when those may not even occur.
yeah, so why not just having all of that beautiful energy for best case scenarios instead of worst case scenarios?
Yeah.
And after that, right? Like, so for now, like for me, like we know the worst case. We're like, okay, we're ready to deal with that. Like, absolutely fine. I feel a lot better respecting my own values and my principles instead of being controlled by an external, which is what, like, money, really, at the end of the day. So do I really believe unconsciously I'm not going to be able to regenerate that? No, I know that I will, and I live well, and a great synchronicity that happened is that once I made that decision, and I had a beautiful body effect that I had to chill, and to me that's my truth. That's my way to know my
Yeah.
truth. I got a message from a friend that I haven't had any news for a while, and that was him talking about the fact that at one point in his life he had all of the toys you can imagine, boats, motorcycles, cars, beautiful house, living with beautiful daughters and a great wife. And his friends would tell him, "You have everything, but still, I feel like you're not quite happy." And he said, "You know what? I mean, I'm gonna have a deal with you. Can you come on Saturday? And on Saturday, we're gonna go into my garage, and you can pick anything you want in the garage, and I'm gonna ask you something in return, and that's not gonna be money. Do you want to do it?" And they say, "Yeah, okay, so let's go." So went on a Saturday. One of his friend would pick up their car, or a Hummer, and say, "Okay, that's the one I want." Going to the safe. Here's the title. So now here's what I want. Are you ready for it? But yeah, I want inner peace.
Yeah.
So how much money is worth inner peace, right? And inner peace is an inner decision.
Priceless.
It's being exactly. So I say that so that the people can realize that what we want sometimes is not even external. And if we are controlled by something external, that means that we don't have inner peace, and inner peace is a choice. And so I hope it serves with the question you had.
Yeah.
To me, to summarize it, is like, okay, so do you really understand the consequences of what you fear?
Mhm.
Because that might just be nothing. It's just, okay, if that's the worst scenario, I'm fine. And if and then you make a choice, because you can focus on that, or you focus on the best case scenario. For me, if I'm going on a roller coaster and I'm in the queue and I'm waiting for an hour and a half, I'm not going to stress in that queue for an hour and a half. I might stress when it starts to do click, 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 click. That would be maybe a good time, a better time to stress. But then my stress is going to be very short, because I'm going to be on the other side and start to go down, and then be so happy about the ride.
Yeah.
So, and my fear is actually just not even existent.
And I guess the choice aspect of that too, because it's like, once you recognize that, when you were talking about values, for example, when you do want to make the choice, you realize, okay, maybe this is the worst case scenario. Am I okay with that or not? And then I've got a decision to make. And how do I want to make that decision? Is it aligned with my values? Is it aligned with a certain outcome I want to achieve? And based on that, once you frankly go through that, make the decision, usually the stress melts away, because it was all actually a pending, unresolved, situation in your head.
Yeah, you were in the loop. So we talked about decision, right? That's funny. Once we make a decision, like, now we just know what to do. We know what to do. And that I just thought about that this morning too. That's why the question, what do you really want? What do you really want? And we all have the ability to choose, and we all have the ability to do incredible things, because we're from the infinite. We're from the creative power. So we're
Yeah.
all part of that. And then people have that inside them. They think they don't, but they do. Because here's the situation: if I would put you down in a pool and you would be about to drown, how committed would you be to go back on the surface and live? You would do anything.
Quite
You would just
committed.
so imagine that commitment that you would have for whatever you want. That's the type of commitment that's a gravitational power. I'm quoting Steve Artisan, the ultimate coach. He's got a great book again, the book of being, or it's called The Ultimate Coach. But it's about the commitment. Once you make that decision, a committed decision, you're not stressed anymore. You know where you're going. You say no to things that are not serving you, and you just go. You just go. You go back to the surface to breathe. That's, if in that analogy.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Like, once you arrive at that point, so many possibilities open up, so much energy frees up to go now in that direction.
Yeah.
I'm sure you come across this. I certainly come across this a lot in my own work with clients, is just oh, I don't know. Oh, I'm, still pondering, wondering, thinking, contemplating, and they're not necessarily stressed. There's not necessarily like this really sort of, we talked about a very high pitched situation where there's a decision that's got to be made. There's a time to it, etc. But then there's some of these rolling decisions.
Hmm.
There's the decisions that kind of make us feel stuck, sort of like how you described this person that had everything but still didn't have that inner peace. And there's probably something really deep there to explore, because obviously they've made a lot of decisions to get to the financial outcomes that they've been able to achieve, but there's some other things that perhaps have not been paid attention to.
Hmm.
For folks that feel like maybe they're just kind of going by the rhythms of the day, they're a little bit on just this like little mini coaster and feel stuck, what advice do you have for them to sort of like get them out of that, and to be able to get to a point of decision?
I get it. I mean, I was there myself many times in my life. Maybe not that many times, but I can relate. I can relate with that. And I think it's at the end of the day, it's just fear of being in the unknown. So, a way I think Tony Robbins does a great job for that, is that I would start to ask questions and say, okay, so there's no real motivation to change. You want to stay in the okay zone. How about you stay in that okay zone for another 6 months? How would your life be? And how about, and so would you feel that you'd be able to be, do, and have everything you want? Like, how does that feel when you go somewhere or a friend of yours is saying, hey, let's go to this place, and you can't because you don't have the money, as an example, or you say you don't have the time, which actually is not true. There's always a way to find time and money once you're committed, once you make a
Mhm.
decision. So, but how would that feel? How would that feel if this situation would show up? And then how would that feel if you had 10 times the pressure at work, whatever, and you amplify it. You amplify it. How would your life be in a year from now? How would your life be in 10 years from now? If you continue to do this, like, how would you be? How would you be your health? How would that
Yeah.
be your relationship with your wife, your relationship with yourself? I don't think that people want to stay still and not use the full potential. I mean, life is really precious.
Yeah.
And here's another example. If you had 5 years to live, what would you do? Would you still continue to do that?
Would you still
And so
continue
it's to get
doing
the
wherever you're stuck?
power. It's,
Yeah.
so Tony Robbins does this process of the Dickens process, where you just go into even 30 years down the road, and you're like, I don't want that. And you feel the pain, because we don't want to feel the pain, but unless we feel the pain, sometimes nothing's changing.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a day where you're going to say, I'm done. I'm done. And that could be now. That could be now. Like, our brain is just saying, oh, I'll talk about it later. And that's just by default, because the brain is a beautiful thing. I mean, I think the brain is just saying, I want to minimize the your pain, so let's not talk about it. Let's talk about it another day. And then, it's just there to make you, that's kind of a con man, the con man that keeps you safe. But then you do that, and you can wake up 10 years later and say, my life hasn't really changed, so maybe you kept me safe, but I'm not happy.
Yeah.
And so you can go through that process and say, it's time for me to change. I'm done. I want to do and be and have everything that I want in life.
You
I
made
want to
me
live my best life.
you made me remember a book that I really cherished, and actually literally changed my life. It was called The Art of Nonconformity by Chris Gillibo.
Oh, I
And
never heard of that book.
that was a book I remember. If I can credit one book that really changed the trajectory of my life. Back then, I was a financial analyst at Intuit. I'm still at Intuit. I work at Intuit. I've been there for like 15 years. Uh, and I was a financial analyst, and I wasn't liking what I was doing for work. I loved what I studied in college. I loved numbers. I loved finance as a subject. But when I was doing the work as a financial analyst, I was like, this is not what I want to do long term. Like, maybe, yeah, sure, in 10, 15 years, I'd be a VP of finance, but I'd still be dealing with the same sort of core things. And this is just not exciting. And I was starting to ask the question of what do I want, but it wasn't quite clear. It needed some exploration, it needed research. I had to figure out, like, okay, if the thing that I just did for the last whatever 5-6 years studying and preparing for, did internships, got a full-time job, if this is not what I want to do anymore, what do I want to do? That was a really hard place to be. And that's when I started reaching out for resources, such as this book that I came across. It was called The Art of Nonconformity, because I felt like I was conforming. And that's why the title spoke to me. And I was like, okay, Art of Nonconformity. I think I could dig that. I think I need to read that. And one of the key things Christian talks about in the book is we as humans often don't make a change until the pain of being in the current situation is greater than the pain of change.
Exactly. Yeah,
And I often
that's
talk
exactly
about
what the
that.
process is.
Yeah, and I often talk about that now with my clients. Is like, hey, maybe perhaps the reason you're not making the change is it's still so really comfortable. If
Yeah,
life
exactly.
is decent, if it's not painful, reaching for the stars is much harder, because what the motivation necessarily isn't there. But yeah, like, I think the way you're pointing out, if you think, is this the way I want to continue feeling 10 years down the line? It's comfortable now, but like, am I going to be still comfortable in 10 years, or am I going to be sort of regretting that I didn't make different decisions while I still have the time?
Yeah, exactly. And things can change in 10 years from now. You might not even have the health to do the things that you thought you would. So there's a thing that I say to my clients is you either wait or you create.
Love
It's
it.
really just that.
Love that.
You either wait for things to happen or you create them. And life is great when you create. And I can speak for myself, at times where I had fear in my body or I played small, I was putting myself in a situation where I would not see or be in the situation of what I really want. For example, um, not having enough money to go to restaurants as much as I can. So I would just pretend, just say, "Oh, I'm gonna stay home and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that." And then I was more on my in my own world, and I would not put myself in the situation of seeing that. But when I put myself in those situations, it hurt because choosing something on a menu based on what you have in your bank account, it's not always fun. But
Mhm.
then there's a day you're like, that's it, I'm done. I'm done. Like I really want to live my best life. I don't want to stress out about what's on how much that costs. I don't want to stress out and calculate everything. I'm done. So at that moment, then you might say to yourself, I don't care about what people are going to think of me. I don't care about the judgments that they're going to have. I'm going to be confident. I'm going to go get the business. I'm going to do what I love because I've stayed small so long and I cared too much about what people would have said about me. So I didn't do anything. But then 10 years later, I'm realizing, maybe I could have acted on something,
Mhm.
and now I would be in a very different situation. Why? Because I gave too much importance about what the people said or would say about me. Wayne Dyer, who I think his anniversary was yesterday, said, when you worry too much about what people are thinking about you, it's basically saying that what they might think about you is more important than what you think about yourself.
Yeah.
That's more important. But what's more important? What the other people are thinking about you? And first of all, they don't even think about you, they just think about themselves. And
It's
that's really the
often us
reality.
thinking about them
Yeah,
thinking
we
about us. We're making stories up
because
in our own head.
yeah, exactly. So when you're worried about what they think about you, it's actually not, you don't even worry necessarily about what they think about you. You worry about the image that you would have for them. So, but it's really about you. So imagine that's the, I think that's the first time I'm really realizing this. It's not, you don't even care about them. You care about you, you in front of everyone. So
Yeah.
if someone would say great things about you, now you feel good. But because it's you feel good. But at one point you realize that this choice is mine. This is absolutely mine. And
Yeah.
once you realize that, you're free. I think the ultimate freedom for me is whatever happens on the outside, which is also my definition of resilience, is that no matter what happens on the outside, it doesn't alter my state. It doesn't. Like that's ultimate freedom. So that means
Yeah.
I mean, I can lose my job, I can lose a partnership, I can do this, I can do that. But once I know my power of creation, once I know how to create, doesn't matter what happened, then I'm always free.
Yeah.
And I have this inner peace. Amazing. That's freedom. And I think that's what people want.
You know,
And we
there's
always kind of,
no, go ahead.
I think we just search for things that are external to provide us a feeling that we can generate ourselves, you know?
Yeah. And I was going to add, Sadhguru, I don't know if you've heard of him, has this really beautiful saying, and in fact, this is what he teaches, and I'm personally really trying to internalize it myself as well, which is exactly to your point. We've never experienced anything outside ourselves. We think we have, and that's how most people behave, and that's how, frankly, even I behave at times. That things are happening outside me, and someone said this or did this, and made me do X, Y, and Z. But really, the situations do occur outside ourselves, but the experience of that situation is very much happening within us, and how we experience the
Yes.
situation is happening within us. So once we are able to create a little bit of distance between whatever it may be occurring and how we would like, then again, stay in your power of creation, how we would like to create the next reaction, decision, action that we would like to portray, that's when we again go back to our power. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a beautiful analogy that popped in my head when you said that. And that's, I think it's been a month that I read it, and it was amazing to me. We might, there's so many things that we already said, right? Like it might just be one thing that one person grabbed and said, I got it. So for me, it was, imagine that you have a projector and you have the image on the wall,
mhm.
right? And then you see that there's something on the wall, this image, but there's some sort of a stain. So, and it's because there's a lint in the projector on the lens. So do you change the image on the wall, or you remove the lint on the projector? So,
Yeah,
and that's exactly what happens. So we see things externally, but we can't fix these things unless we fix the lens. And where's the lens? That's us.
that's
We
us.
are the projector. So if there's a lint, we're not going to scratch the wall trying to freaking think it's always there. It's always there. Like I want to. You
Still
go
keep
to every
showing up.
wall and you're like, geez, but the lint is on the projector, on the lens, and we are the projector. Once
Yeah.
I heard that, I thought this is brilliant. This is just really really what's happening.
And it comes
You
so true in real life experience, because often we're like, man, why do these things keep happening to me? Why does this situation or this person or this type of conversation keep occurring over and over? And it's like, well, it's because we haven't yet recognized and changed the root cause for why those things continue to occur. And that's why
yeah,
it continues to happen until
yeah.
you recognize it.
And this is a great news. I think once you realize that, you realize that you can change and create anything you want. And I think that one of the ways to change something is also in the way that you listen to people. And what I mean by that is, you have you ever, and you can you can see it, we're just have creatures of habits, right? You can receive a call and you receive this call, you're like, oh, not this person, but we're already creating, that's how we already listen. It's going to be painful, or oh, I'm going to pick it up, it's going to be fun. So but that's just again another creation. So once you, let's say you go see your boss, like, oh my god, my boss is going to be tough on me and it's going to drill me, it's going to do that. I remember that once I was stressed years ago, without even being too conscious about it, I would just start to imagine that the outcome of the call would be great. And
Yeah.
so in your way of listening, the best way to listen to anyone and the best way to create is to be what we call empty and meaningless. Landmark talks about it a lot. That's a great foundation called the forum. But it's just to say that if you don't have any expectations, if you don't put any labels, if you don't say, oh, my bus is going to be this way, you're going as if it's the first time that it happens. You're just curious. You'd be surprised about the creations you're gonna have. Your lens is clean. There's
Yeah.
nothing. So and you can actually even create your way of listening, meaning I'm gonna go in and assume that the person is always talking out of their heart. And if on the outside it doesn't look like it, it's not because of me, it's because they're hurt and something happens in their life, and it might be just that same day, and
Yeah.
that's why. I mean, I just know that this person always has my best interest, and if it doesn't look like they do, it's just that they don't know better. I think that really people do the best of with what they have. So now you're listening in a very different way. If you listen that people are always doing with the best with what they have, you'd be a lot more compassionate. And I remember a study that was done, or an exercise that was done with some inmates in prison. And I think they were facing each other. There was like two lines, and then they were saying they were not close to each other, but then they say, whoever had some violence inside their family, please take one step forward. And then, everyone was, for everyone that never heard the word "I love you," please step forward. For anyone, and then you realize, oh my God, if I was living in this situation, I would be a criminal.
Yeah, of
So
course.
who am I to judge that, this thing, the person never had love in their life ever. They were told that they were a piece of S, and all their whole life they never heard "I love you." They were in a bad environment. So who would you be if you had that? Then you realize, I have so much compassion for these guys. Like, they don't know better. They
Yeah.
just don't. But if they and do they want love? Of course they want, but they just never had it. So in your way of listening, I think you're creating a lot of different scenarios and different situations.
Yeah, just opening up to the fact that people are coming from very, very different walks of life. Like our experience is not their experience. Our experience is only our experience. And like you were saying, even when we sometimes experience the same thing, even
Yeah.
then, because again, the experience is within us, it's
Yeah.
different for each person.
Hmm.
Let alone a situation like that where someone, is coming from a really different demographic or financial background, or just the way they were raised, or the community in which they existed, and all the circumstances around it, of course have a huge influence and
Hmm.
shape us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I loved your, when we started going down this path around, like, you can either wait or create.
Hmm.
And it reminded me of actually a conversation I was even having with a client yesterday, where they were wanting to create their uh, desired role at work. Except whenever they would start talking about it, it's like, oh, this is available, and I don't know if XYZ is available on this other path. And I said, like, hey, great, it's great to know what's available and what's not available, but what do you want? What's the ideal role for you? Have you defined it? Have you
Hmm.
written it down?
Hmm.
People say,
Hmm.
I'm stuck
Hmm.
in a job I don't like. Well, what job do you like?
Yeah.
and
Clarity.
and we get clear on that, because once we get clear on it, we can find it. We can talk to people that might have the job today. We can maybe even pitch to create the job in a type of organization that you may want to be in.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so there's tremendous power, when we start going from what I don't want to what do I want.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's true. Some people say, "Well, I don't know what I want," but sometimes they do know what they don't want. So you just reverse it. Okay, yeah, I don't want to be in a bad environment. So define me what the bad environment is. Well, people are really stressed out for that reason. We work more hours. Okay, so are you saying you want to work just maximum 8 hours, and whatever you flip it, and then you start to realize that you have way more clarity than you think. Especially when you compress time and you say, you have 5 years to live. What would you do? Or if you keep on going doing what you're doing for the next 10, 20, 30 years, then they get the pain and they're like, I'm out. Okay, well, you can choose that now. You don't need to wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we're at time, Francis, and I loved our conversation. Everything from how you make decisions, how you get to a point to be able to make a decision, to imagination, to having the faith, and then of course taking our own actions, like the farmer, making sure you have good soil, water,
Yeah.
compost, the seed, but then let the universe take care of the rest. You've done your bit, but you've got to do your bit.
And yeah, and I'll add just one more thing, and just because it's the second time I got this idea. So where I'm going to say, I follow my signs. There's Craig Braden. I'm sure you know him.
I don't actually.
He's wrote. No, okay. So he wrote the Divine Matrix. He's very involved with Bruce Lipton at times, and Joe Dispenza. But there's an exercise that he talks about, because the heart has a lot of neurons. I think it's, if it's not more maybe than the brain. So we are making a lot of our decisions, the best decisions that we make is out of our heart, and then we can use the brain as our servant. The master is the heart. So if people are wondering about what type of decisions to make, this is where the stillness or meditation comes in, and being in silence and relax, and maybe do some breathing. And once you have relaxed, your brain is not in a fight or flight reaction, you can be more creative, you can start to be intuitive and get some ideas. So you relax, you can do that type of breathing, the box breathing, which is, let's say you breathe in 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and you hold it another 4 seconds. You can do that 3 times. You'll be guaranteed a lot more calm. And
Oh
so
yeah,
that could be a way, a trick actually, to when you feel stressed, just breathe.
because breath
And
affects body. When our body is
exactly, right?
affecting us, our breath goes out of sync, but then we can consciously take our breath and reverse it.
Yeah, and then once you have that state, then you can say this question. You just put your hands on the heart, and you can say, "My heart, what do you have to tell me about this situation?" And then you can have another question. "My heart, how can I serve you?" And then the heart's going to find the answer. You're just going to find
Yeah,
it, and you need to be in that stillness first. And the heart's going to say, of course, like, you just go for it, you go for it, like, forget
yeah,
about the fear, like, let's go for it. And so, and the best decisions are always made out of love, out of the heart, not out of fear.
yeah. That's
So
beautiful. Yeah,
yeah.
that's where the intuition, you're starting to tap into your intuition and letting the answer come in. But I love the way you phrase the question as, my heart, what
What do
direction
you
do
have
I
to tell
take
me
from
about this
here?
situation? Yeah, what
Yeah.
directions do I need to make? And then, oh, and that's the thing, is that the answer is usually very quick. That's the beauty about it. Like, it's not going to take an hour. You're just going to That's gonna, of course, and you just need to be in that stillness.
Yeah, it's usually very
And
subtle. And so the
yeah,
stillness helps us recognize, oh, yeah, the answer is right here in front of me. The entire time it was here. I was just so busy with all these other things.
it's like distortion, noise, but you just remove that, and then all of a sudden you get this clear message, this clear signal, and you get it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I hope it serves the your audience very well. Thank you for, um,
That's almost the
uh,
It's almost the ending meditation technique. We started with one, and then this is
yeah,
where, as soon
exactly.
as people end this podcast, they can go into the box breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold. And
Yeah,
once you do that a few times, you relax into it. Ask your heart a question. Run an experiment right now, frankly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Once
Mhm.
you're done listening to this podcast for the audience, I would say run that experiment right after this. Get into that
Absolutely.
state.
And yeah, let's do an experiment. Let's ask them to put their notes or comments. What is, I actually, this, why not doing it now, right? If there's something that is, or you had in your mind for a while, you don't know the answer, run it now. Whatever it could be a small thing to ask or a big thing, and just do the experiment. You will get an answer.
Yeah. Even I'm going to
And
try
I
that for
guarantee that
myself.
when you follow your heart, yeah, the what, sorry?
Even I'm gonna try that right after this. I haven't tried that in a
Yeah.
while.
It's powerful. I mean, I got, like, yeah, and sometimes we don't want to hear it, but that's the reality. It's the heart knows. The heart knows. And once we make a decision, we're going back to the committed decision. The brain is absolutely brilliant, and it's, oh, you're going left. Oh, well, now that you've decided to go left, here's how the GPS is going to work. You go, here
Yeah,
are the steps, versus just the brain is just waiting for like, what direction are we taking? What direction are we taking? I'm going to
It's
tell you. I'm going to tell you. As soon as you give me the direction, the heart's going to give you the direction, and then bam, we're going to find out how. But it's not going to happen until you tell me where you want to go.
Yeah, we usually, what typically happens in a lot of people's lives is they end up they overanalyze using their brain, which is a beautiful tool of execution, planning, everything. But we end up using the tool to help us determine the direction. The
Exactly.
GPS still needs
Wow.
you to
Well said.
tell where you want to go. Once you tell the GPS where you want to go, it can help you navigate. So it's a beautiful
Exactly.
analogy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. I hopefully, I mean, there's a lot of gems of what we said. My intention is that I hope that each and everyone, or at least, you pick up one thing that you can apply.
Yeah,
Because you can listen and experience, you can listen to something just for listening to something, but what's the point? Experience it, act on it. That's
yeah,
how you learn. That's how you change your life.
yeah. And maybe it's taking one thing from each of these sessions and choosing to apply it and then see how it shows up in your life, right? And slowly those are the multitudes of decisions that have changed our lives, and they can surely do that for everyone else.
Yeah,
Francis, thank you so much for being here today, for having this really lively, deep conversations. That this is the way we love to do it. Nothing is planned and everything is here.
it's perfect. Thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate you, and sending you and your audience an amazing day. Wishes of an amazing day.
Awesome. All right. Well, for everyone else, we will catch you in another session. Signing off for now. Thank you all.